Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Breakfast with Bobbi. I'm Christina, and I'm your co host. And this is my co host, Bobbi. And we are here to talk about basically whatever pops into our heads. And right before we started recording, we had a whole bunch of really fun stuff pop into our heads. So I'm going to turn it over to Bobbi and let her say good morning to y'all.
Well, good morning, everyone. I am so thrilled and honored to be here, and we hope that this show gives you a bit of entertainment at the very least, because we never really know what we're going to talk about, but
Yeah.
and hopefully, some education and enlightenment and thought, just thought,
Thought.
just thinking. When you don't have anything else to do, just sit and think. And I can't really say that we always do that, but
And
today,
sometimes we do it too much.
incorrect. If you get too far in your head, it just
Yeah.
doesn't work well. So we thought today that we would talk about anxiety and stress and really kind of related to money and how when you don't have it or you expect it and it doesn't come, how that really affects you. And since I do a lot of stock market stuff and I trade my own portfolio, I was telling Christina this morning that that really affects my mood all day long. And when, if I pick a stock and it goes the other way, it's not a happy time. And when the market is down, like it is today, unless you're leveraged to the other side, it really is unnerving to watch things drop like a hot knife. So that being said, we all really experience a lot of money things day in and day out because if you can't pay your bills or you have that threat, what do you do? And how do you handle that? Um, my personality just goes really to the other side. And, I have a few. So that being said, it's just really kind of interesting, the stressors. You never really know what's going to show up, Christina.
You have a few personalities.
Well, at least a few moods. And they do say in psychology, they do say that you have about somewhere between 4 and 5 personalities that, just so you know.
Okay. I could see that. It's just the way you said it made me laugh.
Yeah. Sometimes it makes me laugh as well. But anyway, so how do you handle that stress thing with your money and what do you do and how do you get out of that funk?
Yeah, well, being fully self-employed, um, I can totally relate. I can completely relate to when the money's not coming in, it gets stressful. And it's so interesting how this whole money thing is a complete fabrication anyway, right? Like it's just all made up. Everything is all made up. We've had this discussion before, and I'm working on your mug, by the way. So everything is made up, but this whole financial system is fabricated. And but yet we still get affected by it. There was a mistake on my credit report last month, and I was mistakenly turned over to collections for something that wasn't even my bill, but it tanked my credit report. And it's like it just threw me into a depression.
Yeah.
And it's all straightened out now. It's all straightened out. Everything is good now. But boy, it was like somebody yanked the rug out from under me. It's like when you see your numbers fall almost 100 points, that's a huge hit, right?
That's a lot.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was a lot. And it really was very disheartening for me to all of a sudden have that show up.
So, of course, I'm a scientific kind of person. So, how um, that one particular agency has an effect on your credit rating, and along with the other institutions that affects you,
Mm-hmm.
just that one institution, that one company has the ability to remove
Base,
that and then restore your credit rating.
yes. And they had the ability to crash it in the first place. It's uh, but what we're really talking about here, we're not talking about, I don't think, so much about, the ins and outs of how the financial system works, because it doesn't make any sense anyway. So what we're talking about, though, is how it hits us emotionally,
Right.
how it hits
Yeah.
our mental state and our mental health. Because, I mean, I worked really hard to get to where I was, and then to just have a rug yanked out from under me like that was emotionally devastating,
What if
and
you wouldn't be able to recover that? How then? Imagine the
right,
emotional effect on you from that.
right. Had it actually been my bill and my responsibility, which it
Wow.
wasn't, and I'd never heard of this company. So, um, I did what I had to do to take care of it. And honestly, I just Googled how to remove something from your credit report, because I'd never had to remove anything from my credit report before. So I didn't know how to do it. I mean, if you've never had the experience, you don't know how to do that, right? So
Right.
I just Googled it. So if anybody wants to know how to do it, Google it. That's what I did. But once it was removed and my credit rating was restored, it's like I could breathe again,
Hmm.
because what it had done was diminish my ability to buy a house if I chose to, or it really, if you don't, this is what's really screwy about it, is that if you have bad numbers or low numbers, they charge you more because you can't afford more.
Right. Which
W-
makes absolutely no sense.
It makes absolutely no sense. None,
Right.
zero, zip. But that's what they do. And, we're looking at buying my husband a car. His is really, it needs to go. But I mean, and oh, God bless him, he gets every mile out of a car, let me tell you. He will, he knows how to do that. But, we are now in a position of buying another car. So, having my credit rating tank like that right before we needed to go buy a car, not cool. Not cool. And it is devastating that somebody you don't even know can do that to you,
Right.
So I'm all for taking responsibility for what I create, but I didn't create that.
Right. And seemingly had no control over any of it. So,
Right. And I think that's the hard part. So how it hit me emotionally was, it caused a lot of, I want to say almost flashbacks, but it wasn't quite flashbacks. It was more, what's the word? Like something hits you from the past.
well, perhaps a trigger.
A trigger. It was definitely a trigger of growing up poor, of
Oh,
struggling
yeah.
through my 20s and 30s. I mean, it's like all of that came back, and it really affects your self-esteem.
Right.
You know, I am not one of these people that glorifies poverty as happiness, because it isn't.
Right.
Poverty is hard,
Exactly.
you
It's not a
know?
crime, but it's hard.
Right.
It's very difficult.
It is very difficult to be poor and live in a place where you have to pay bills for everything. I mean, like, we have to pay to live on this planet.
Right.
Right? So poverty is not something that should be glorified or romanticized by any means. And I'm not saying wealth should be glorified or romanticized either. But what I'm saying is that when you are struggling just to keep a roof over your head, that's hard.
And some of us can't ask. Some of us don't have anybody to ask
Right.
for help.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
so I just noticed that as I was saying that when I'm losing money, the whole world, my whole world just sort of is in a static, meaning chaotic feeling
Mm-hmm.
uh, that it's difficult to move. You can't really even focus on anything else throughout the day other than that. How am I going to get out of that? And you get so far in your head that it's hard to get out.
Yeah.
And you really have to go back to the really simple things like even simply just say to yourself, you need to breathe
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 deep breaths. And sometimes when you get so far in your head, for me anyway, if I uh, want to move my attention somewhere else, I have to physically tell myself to focus somewhere else or go distract myself, go take a walk outside. And sometimes by walking away,
Mm-hmm.
and taking your mind off of that, again, it's the same thing that we talked about the 3 point or 2 point connection where you drop into your heart
Mm-hmm.
and place the intent and then you let go. And it's all in the letting go. So if you take your mind off of that, all kinds of, when you go back to focus on it,
Mm-hmm.
then it seems like you get other ideas or other thoughts come to your head, and you may be able to discover something that you hadn't thought about before.
Exactly.
If you can control
Yeah.
yourself to that point, you're doing really, really well. And some of us are not able to do that all the time.
Right.
So,
Well, and
yeah,
I go back to the teachings of Abraham Hicks, and there's a million YouTubes on Abraham Hicks. And it's the law of attraction. And sometimes I need to go back and need to listen to two or three of those 15-minute segments to shift my thinking, to bring my thinking back to appreciation and gratitude, you know? So there's a fictitious number and it is destroying my mood, right?
right.
Sometimes I need to get perspective on that. And really, that's what it is for me. It's getting perspective, it's finding what I can focus on to make it better, you know? So allowing myself to stay stunk in that stops income from coming in for me because my business runs on energy. It runs on my energy.
Right.
And
Wow.
when my energy is low, there's no income coming in. So I have to do what I have to do to get my energy up higher.
So do you think that you mentioned perspective? Um, I know sometimes I get into my head so far that things don't look right. And when you pull yourself out or have a coach or a mentor, somebody that you can
Mhm.
call to talk to, sometimes when you outline those things and look at the steps or the components of it all, you realize that you have other options and other
Yes.
choices of how you can do things. And perhaps
Mhm.
it's really not as bad as you think. Because, unless you're somebody standing at the door taking out I'm sorry, taking out, the things out of your house and moving you out,
Mhm.
things aren't horribly bad, but
Right.
we tend to think that. And people
Right.
that are perfectionists, um, tend to get down on themselves a whole lot more than someone who is pretty flexible and um,
What,
capable.
perfectionist me?
Oh, I'm not either. I don't know where you got that from.
Yeah, I have so many Virgos in my in my astrological chart. It's I frustrate myself. It's just yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
focusing on what you can do that you have control over,
Mhm.
um, is at least a start to getting your mood to change back to something that you can feel better about and focus about.
Right.
And even, I think focusing on what you did well is
Mhm.
better than focusing on not, and what you have to do and what if.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, because again, my business runs on energy, for those of who don't know, I'm a professional psychic. I have to keep my energy high because I'm a spiritual advisor. I help advise people. And when I'm like tanked, I can't
Yeah,
do my job very well.
right.
And so for me, it's meditation, it's breathing, it's sending love out into the world from my heart center. It's doing all of those things that most people would probably consider woo-woo, but it raises my energy. And if people want to think it's woo-woo, feel free. I don't care. So we just keep, I literally have to do those things though,
Yeah,
smell my essential oils that are uplifting
yeah,
and that sort of thing that works with all of my senses, even holding onto a crystal, which most people would roll their eyes at probably. I don't care. Roll your eyes, doesn't affect me in the least. But doing those things, doing what feels good to me, helps me raise my energy.
right.
And it's really, important for me to keep my mental and emotional energy up and my spiritual energy up in order to continue moving forward. Like, this is one of 3 podcasts that I do. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Beautiful.
I spend a lot of time sitting here in front of a camera, and we talked about, like, the lines and the I'm 56. I'm going to have some lines. But I look and I'm like, oh my God, I look like my grandmother. Well, when I was a kid, my grandmother was about this age. You know?
And we thought that was old.
And we thought that was, well, now I'm looking at the camera and going, yeah, it's looking pretty old at the moment. But it's one, it's just, it's another one of those things that affects how I feel about myself. So there's a lot that goes into keeping energy up.
Do you find that exercise, movement, any of that, do you feel that any of that changes your vibration, changes your
Oh,
mood?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Like I was telling you before before we hit the record button, I was doing my version of yoga, which is basically the 3 or 4 different yoga poses I can remember in my
Mm,
living room. But it helps. I mean, it was
mm.
like -7 or something this morning. So, normally I would go out and walk, and I will this afternoon. Excuse me. We're above 0 now, so, I feel better about going out and walking. But yeah, I do. I feel like physical movement helps a lot, actually.
Yeah, the chemicals in your brain
Mhm.
are really important ones, hormones and chemicals and all that.
Mhm.
If I don't work out 2 or 3 times a week, my mood just tanks. And then everything starts to affect me. And then the
Right.
money thing, and it just becomes a big roller coaster. And now you're on the hamster wheel and you can't get off.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so those are things that I have to pay attention to and really analyze where I am.
Mhm.
Um, and I think as you get older, I think these things become more prominent.
Mhm.
Young
I
kids
think
don't
so
think
too.
like that. I mean, we thought all this stuff was woo when we were kids.
Yeah.
Is there
Like,
really such a thing? Energy. What are you talking about? I remember
mhm.
somebody talking about how it was something about pain in their body and how emotional situations affected this person. I thought, what a whack job. Holy cow. And
And lo and behold, it's
here I
true.
am.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah, and through Reiki training and all the other various trainings that I've had and certifications and stuff, I've realized, we hold emotions in our organs.
We do.
And if you pay attention to all of that, um, even your sleep patterns are affected by that. It's
Mhm.
amazing. You're all one. You know what else? I saw a video the other day. Do you know what the Merkaba is? Do you know what the Merkaba?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Have you seen any? That was such an extensive 30-minute video. There's so much to the Merkaba. I thought, holy cow, I had to I did a write-up for a business and they said something about connecting to the Merkaba. And I thought, who knows that? I don't know that. But I saw this video and it's really very integrated into math and science into your body and
Mhm.
all of your energy centers and this whole and the Taurus and all of that. It really kind of came together for me. I can't tell you that I understand all of it because it was really pretty big, but it's out there if anybody wants to look up what a Merkaba is and how that affects you and what's going on. It's really and
Mhm.
the energy centers and stuff. But
It's like a
anyway,
representation of your energy centers.
and how we are all
Yeah.
connected. We all have that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah,
now that
how
we
we are all
know,
connected. Oh my gosh, that is so big.
wow.
I mean, that could be a whole series right there, on how we're all connected, and how our behavior and our thinking and our thoughts and our feelings and our interactions affect other people.
That's one of my favorite lines. Be aware of how your behavior affects other people.
Mhm.
The smallest little thing.
Absolutely.
When you say, well, I
Absolutely.
thought, yeah, well, you know, unless you're doing it with kindness and a love in your heart.
Hmm.
And even that, of course, that affects everybody as well, to the good. Um,
Hmm.
anyway, so
Yeah.
what else are we going to talk about now that we've gone down the Merkaba trail?
And the financial trail and the
Yeah,
energy
right.
trail. Well, everything is energy. I mean, it's like that's what I was going to bring it. That's basic sixth grade science, maybe even fifth grade science. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. So really, there's no way to create energy. There's only a way to make it move faster
Or slower.
or
Yeah,
slower.
right.
Right. And as humans, when our energy is moving slower, we get depressed. We have anxiety. That's it. We get illness when our energy is moving slower. And I'm not blaming anybody for getting sick. I'm not putting that out there. That's not what I'm saying. But it is harder to recover from an illness when we are not able to consciously affect our own energy or have someone else help us with that. Like you said, Reiki, some people might not know what that is. So it is a transfer of universal life force energy through one person to another person or animal or houseplant if you want to. But it is literally bringing that life force energy with intention to someone else to help them heal.
Right.
That's Reiki in a nutshell. Okay.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I think that energy is such an important topic because we don't know enough about our own energy. I think we had talked about our energy fields going way out from us and how to manage that and pull it in, but it really is so important. And I think, we had talked about authenticity too, and what does that mean? What does it mean to be authentic? And for me, authenticity has a lot to do with my energy
Oh,
because
absolutely.
if my energy is low, I am more likely to just kind of go, eh. you
Right.
know, instead of being authentically who I am. And um, I'm going to turn that over to you. What do you have to say about authenticity?
Uh, I think for me, my whole life revolves around being authentic.
Hmm.
And trust is a big deal. And if uh, once you lose trust from someone or to someone,
Hmm.
it affects the entire relationship.
Yes.
Um, and being honest, you don't have to kill anybody in the process of being honest.
Hmm.
Um, I do tend to be pretty upfront and honest about things that I say to people, um, without having to bring in my misunderstood child and over explain things. Just kind of getting right to the point. And some people don't do that well.
Hmm.
Um, I think if you don't have authenticity, what do you have? Your whole world is built on that. If you're living in a fictitious state of not being authentic, you can't even trust yourself because you don't even know if you've showed up.
Hmm.
I think showing up is a huge thing as well. If you can't show up for yourself, who can you show up for? And if you're not showing up for yourself and you're showing up for other people,
Hmm.
then we need to look inside and see, because now we don't appreciate who we are. Now we've lost respect for ourselves and put uh, more interest, more authenticity, more trust and faith in other people rather than ourselves of who we are.
Right. And we live in a society where that's pretty much expected.
Right. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's
Whether it's going to school and conforming to school, even if it doesn't resonate with you, and God bless all of my high school teachers because I'm pretty sure I had arguments with every single one of them. Because if something came up that didn't resonate with me, or I knew wasn't true that they were teaching, I called it out.
that's
Ev-
huge.
every time I called it out. And, um, yeah, it's one of those like history. Oh my God. Don't even get me started on history. But it was, I would literally just say, why are you teaching us lies?
Mm, that's huge.
And most of those teachers actually did not even realize that they were teaching us lies.
Yeah,
They just believed what they were told and spit it back out again.
right.
You
Well,
know?
my favorite saying is, people just make that shit up, and that's where it starts
Mm-hmm.
because people are fed information from the minute they're born and they tend to believe it. But in reality, everything is an opinion because you
Mm-hmm.
just make it up as you go along. Look at
Right.
all of the businesses out there where well, it's policy, it's company policy, and you think that's like written in some script somewhere that, it's like your permanent record. It's going on your permanent record. What is that?
Yeah,
My heart's my permanent record, and I know enough about
exactly.
that, but
I have to
we
say though, it took me some time to get there.
uh, because we're so conditioned
Mm-hmm.
believe what other people tell us because we really don't have anything else. And again, it goes back to the trust thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to trust someone to know that what you're doing is right or it feels good or whatever. But coming from a place of inauthenticity,
Mm-hmm.
you're not really sure what you're dealing with. And then we get in trouble because we believe. But again, somewhere along the line, you have to trust something. And even if you're sitting in meditation by yourself, listening to messages that come up, that's pretty authentic. That I don't think it
Yeah.
gets any more authentic than that.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you. And I think that inauthenticity or not being authentic is something that we have to learn our way out of because we live in a society that teaches us to be that way. Trust other
Sure.
people, trust other authorities above yourself, trust the priest or the pastor or the teacher or the principal or your parents or the neighbor lady or whatever it is. Everybody knows better than you because they're older than you. And so we are taught as children not to be authentic.
Sure.
We are taught not to be who we actually are. And so I guess I just want to be careful with using the word inauthentic because I don't want people to think that I'm saying, oh, you're choosing to be inauthentic. Because until you know what authenticity is, you can't choose to be authentic.
Well, they think they are. That's
They think they are. Yeah.
right.
Well, I thought I was. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We tend to, for me, I've wrestled with the real thing for quite a while, as a young person and not having a lot of support because my mother died when I was young and my dad worked third shift and being number 5 out of 6 in the children who supported me. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of my learning was from other people. And I'm telling you, it's the school of hard knocks
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know if you're reacting correctly or because it's a reaction that you think is authentic, and then somebody slams on the brakes for you,
Mm-hmm.
telling you that that's not a good way to be, and you're thinking, well, that's how I felt. How do I do that?
Yeah.
So now you have to adapt your behavior, and you have to learn a whole new set of things. Um, and it's all sort of it's all again it's all sort of you learn how to make it up as you go along, and
Mm-hmm.
whether or not that situation works because you reacted correctly, then you're on to the next thing. Well, it worked last time, but and so which brings me to another topic in terms of authenticity. I spent 20 years at the Medical College of Wisconsin and grew my way up from an administrative assistant into being an administrator for 2 divisions. Um, Throughout all of that, I learned business acumen from physicians and directors and nursing staff and such. So, in addition to having a formal education, um, there was a point in time when sitting in a boardroom with 17 physicians and directing the meeting and having a good outcome, um, leading the way through, worked out well in certain situations. And then I took a different job. We were downsized. There was a new administrator that came in and sort of like they do. It's kind of like having a new president where they all do whatever they want to do they think it's going to work better. So um, being sort of semi-retired for like 5 years after that, I decided that I was bored and I wanted to go get a different job. And so I had to dummy down my resume to a point
Yeah.
where I didn't want to be at that level. And so I dummied down my resume to a point where I could get a job at a high level admin. And all of my leadership at that point, I thought, this is a slam dunk for me. But the culture was so different because it was in an insurance agency. So I went from a nonprofit to a profit, and the business acumen is entirely different. And everything I knew, none of it worked.
Right.
So imagine my shock at what I learned didn't work anymore.
Yeah. That's kind of life in a nutshell, isn't it? Everything I learned didn't work anymore. It reminds me of, back in my late teens, early 20s when um, I was coming out of, I was a teenage drug addict. I was a teenage alcoholic.
Mm,
And, spending like the first 10 years out of that in recovery, guessing at what
mm,
was normal because I had no idea. I had no idea how to be authentically myself. During my growing and developing years, I was intoxicated pretty much the whole
mm,
time.
yeah,
It wasn't like, just go out on the weekend and get blitzed. It was in between that, using the drugs to keep me going and functioning, which I know most people who aren't familiar with addiction wouldn't know that, but it was like a constant intoxication for years while my brain was developing. So as I was coming out of that and I was 17 when I got sober, and been sober since, by the way, just in case anyone's wondering. So um
yay.
yeah,
Congratulations.
yay, absolutely. But it's also, I had to go through developmental stages at that age that I should have gone through well before that point, emotionally, especially, So guessing at what's normal, learning how to be who I am, not having any idea why I'm not on track with my peers because they went through those stages, you know.
Right.
Um, and so, I mean, I know we both came from difficult childhoods, but very different difficult childhoods, difficult in different ways.
Yep.
But I still feel like as you're going through into adulthood, through those whatever the difficulty was, there is some sort of stunting to the emotional growth, you know, because I don't know about you, but I always felt like I had to figure out how to be older than I was. Like,
Yeah.
you
When
know,
you grow up that fast, you bet.
yeah, when you grow up that fast, you have to figure out, and because both of my parents are addicts too, they weren't really able to be present for me while I was going through addiction because they were in their own addictions. My dad left when I was 11, so there was a loss of a parent. And when
Right.
he left and went across country. Like he didn't just like move down the street. He went cross country, didn't see him for years. So that was kind of the, similar to your mom dying, but not quite the same, you
Well,
know,
loss of a parent in any facet is a loss, and you
is a
don't really
loss.
know how that really affects you. And again, you become
Yeah.
angry and distracted and all kinds of stuff, and I can do this and whatever, and then you come to a point in your life where you're like, I don't know any of that. How come I don't know that?
Yeah. Yeah. And even now, I'm still finding out there are things I don't know that I feel like I really should have known.
I agree.
you know,
How come I don't know that?
why don't I know that? I should have known that. Why did I not get that information? Where did that information somehow not get to me? And
Right.
that for me leads back to the whole financial thing because I didn't learn anything about finances. I had no idea about finance. I didn't know when I moved out of my mom's house. I did not know. I knew what a checking account was. I had no idea how to use one.
Mm,
Basic, simple information like that. So when something comes in from the outside and crashes my financial situation, it throws me right back there to I don't know what to do. I don't know why I'm being punished. I don't know why I don't have this information. Well, hopefully nobody ever needs that information because again, it was a mistake. So, yeah, yeah, but it's still like that was a big throwback to me to dealing with shame
Yeah.
guilt,
Yes.
confusion,
Hmm.
sadness, anger, all of that came up again because of that situation. And that's what I was really um, getting to with, how financial situations affect us. Because if you've struggled in the past and all of a sudden you're confronted with something like that, it throws you right back to that struggle.
Right.
Even though that's not my actual situation at this point, it throws you right back,
Yeah.
you know? And money and shame go hand in hand.
Right. I, you mentioned something about being a perfectionist, and I don't recall if we were taping at that point or not, but a lot of shame and guilt have
Mhm.
affected me over. Yeah, and again, like you said, you had no teaching, no mentoring, nobody to show you how to do that. I
Right.
didn't either.
Right.
Um, there were four kids older than me. My other sister above me is 8 years older. So, my father worked third shift and in a brewery of all things, and he may or may not have come home sober or not.
Right.
So the day was always a crapshoot. Um, but no one ever sat me down at the table and said, "This is how you handle this." So when
Right.
you go on your own, um, then you struggle to figure out the best way to do that. And again, it's all the school of hard knocks. When you don't pay your
Mhm.
bills, ooh, don't do that again.
Yeah.
I have to learn a better way to do that. Um, in addition to all of that, the shame and the guilt, I read something about the shame thing there and perfectionism. There's
Mhm.
two different perfectionisms. There's a reason. Are you a perfectionist because you desire high quality? You desire the highest quality of the situation
Mhm.
and yourself? Or are you shamed and guilted into something because of your past, because of the way that you were brought up?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it took a long time to figure that out. I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of Brene Brown.
Yeah.
Um, I know that she does a huge speaking TED talk on shame and guilt about how that works. But so it takes us forever to learn things. I'm just sometimes um, a little resentful. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little resentful of the fact that I didn't have parents that took me by the hand and showed me simple things like how to operate a checkbook
Mhm.
or, made sure that I was in a safe situation.
Mhm.
Um, when my dad, my mom died, my dad remarried, and then a year later married someone else. And so then they sold our house in Muskego and moved up north. I had no place to go. The only reason I'm here in Milwaukee in this area is because I had a baseball coach that didn't want me to leave the team at that time and wanted me to finish it out. And I told him that I had no place to go. I didn't have a place to live. And he said, "You can come and live with us." And so in this little teeny tiny cracker box of a house, 6 girls and then me, we we lived in that small house and made it work. But we were
Yeah.
all compassionate towards each other. And again, I can't help sometimes to marvel at not only what I've been through,
Mhm.
uh, but how far I've come. And
Yeah.
there is a real possibility that I could have ended up on the street corners or
Right.
sleeping down on the road in the tent or something. I could have been one of those people.
Me
And
too.
by the miracle of God, here we are doing a
Right.
podcast in a
Right.
warm house.
Exactly. Exactly. When it's 9 degrees outside.
Right.
And um yeah, I mean, and I've been homeless as an adult because I didn't know how to manage my finances. I didn't know how to I um you know, my story gets a little complicated. Sobering up at 17 and diagnosed with cancer at 18.
Mm,
So, there was, I had just started college because I had been able to get some grants to go to college and then had to drop out of college to deal with having cancer. And,
mm,
so not having the education because I didn't go back right away. And, um, there's things that people who meet me now and see me now don't see where I came from. Right. And I keep because I'm a perfectionist, and maybe it comes from that whole shame and guilt background, but I'm a perfectionist, and I feel like I should be further ahead than I am. But if I really just stop and take stock of where I came from, I am light years ahead of
I
where I
agree.
was.
Yeah.
Light years ahead of where I was. And I'm saying that because I want to encourage everybody, just stop and take a look back once in a while and see how far you've come.
Yeah.
Because you and I have both come a long way from where we started.
Yeah. Huge.
Huge.
Um,
Yeah. And I never would have seen myself sitting here talking to a microphone, you know, and a friend and doing some of the other things I do, like the Facebook Lives, where I'm not really getting a lot of feedback, just talking. And it's really interesting how we can take that moment sometimes and look back and go, you know what? I'm doing okay. I'm
I made
doing
it.
okay.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
made it. And I'm not saying we made it well, but we made it. And we always, I think you always have to have some aspiration of where you'd like to. I mean, even if it's so small as I want tomorrow to be better. That's all.
Right.
The next
Right.
hour to be better. And
Mhm.
remind yourself to breathe through whatever it is, because in that next breath, and interestingly enough, oxygen does a huge thing for your brain,
It
along with
does.
workouts, along with funny thing.
Yeah. Sugar,
Oh,
not so much, but oxygen. Oxygen is really good for the brain.
oh, I don't
Um,
know. Sugar does good things too. It's not good for you, a lot of it, but darn it all, it
oh,
feels good.
sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's comfort. But yeah, it's just, and I'm not even going to get off on that because sugar is one of my battles right now. But
Me too.
um, it's really important sometimes that we just take a moment to pat ourselves on the back and be okay with the fact that we can pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah. And
There's nothing wrong with acknowledging how far you've come.
right. I think the bigger picture of all of that is to remind yourself why you're here.
Hmm.
We're here to learn. We're here to learn lessons. And whether it be, the painful lessons are the ones that teach you the most, and change you the most. I recall, waking up a few times saying to myself, why am I here? What am I doing? This whole thing just feels like it's useless and I have no purpose. And what am I doing? What am I going to do tomorrow to make this different from today?
And this whole planet just doesn't make sense. Like,
Right.
I have been there too, where it's like the whole planet doesn't make sense. And I don't think we're here just to learn lessons. I think we're here to experience, just to
Well, true.
experience,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, to experience what it's like to have a good friend where, you and I, we live what, 25 minutes from each other? We hardly ever see each other.
yeah, that's true.
But just because we don't see each other doesn't mean the friendship goes away. We get to still experience each other. We still get to experience the love that we have for each other. And, I really feel like, experiencing love is a big part of why we're here. And love
Yeah,
isn't necessarily always romantic love. It's all kinds of love. And
right.
I feel like it's important that um, we don't always have to feel like we're in school. You know, I mean, there's a lot to learn. Absolutely, there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to remember, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we always have to feel like we're in school. And I keep looking at this pencil that I'm holding. It says, "Seek the adventure."
What a great thing.
Yeah,
Every day is an adventure.
every
If you
day
can
is an
look at that every
adventure.
day and say
Hmm.
that, you're doing way better
Yeah,
than most.
yeah. And it's I just really feel like it's important that we give ourselves a break sometimes. It's important to grow, it's important to learn, it's important to strive. Yeah, all those things are important. But sometimes taking a break and acknowledging who we are and how far we've come and maybe what we've accomplished, but maybe sometimes just moving from surviving into thriving is an accomplishment.
Yeah, right. The survival thing into thriving is once you cross that, you've done really well.
Hmm.
And your opinion of what thriving is
Is
is where it's
yours alone.
at. Right.
Yeah, define it the way you want to,
Hmm.
and for me, thriving is a mindset.
I agree. I think a lot of things are mindsets, most
Hmm.
things, you know.
Yeah. Yep. You know what? I think that this has been an amazing discussion, and we may have just picked our next topic with the thriving thing.
Oh,
Oh, all right, everybody. It's been a pleasure to sit and talk with my dear friend Bobbi. And I think we're going to call it a day here, and we'll see you next time.
thank you all very much. Have
Yeah,
a great
thank
day.
you. Bye bye.